Welcome back to my channel, and yes, it's finally that time as we discuss my best movies of 2020. I know I'm 2 weeks late to this list. I was trying to do a ton of catch up between movies that I didn't get to check out and movies I did see but didn't review, and that's why you saw a ton of content getting dropped on the channel for the last week or so. So thank you for bearing with me as far as those go. But I'm as caught up as I can be. So before we begin, let me know in the comments your favorite movies of 2020. And as always, this is just my personal list, not a definitive ranking. We're going to disagree, and that's okay. I'd like to just make it clear, even with the amount of catching up I did, I obviously haven't seen every single movie out there. So if your favorite movie isn't on here, that could be why. This is going to be a little longer than most of my videos, and I'll have everything timestamped to make things easier, because when it comes to the best of the year, I don't like to just do a top 10. I think by doing that, it leaves off a lot of really good movies each year, especially with the amount of movies that I've seen. And there are a lot of movies I'd still highly recommend that simply didn't make the cut. So this will be a top 25 list, and even by doing so, I'm still leaving off a lot of really enjoyable movies. Because contrary to popular belief, there actually were a lot of very good movies released in 2020. It was the year where independent cinema really got the shine between VOD releases, limited theatrical runs, and so on. So you'll see a few movies on here that I don't think were talked about all that much by a lot of people. Not the case for all of them by any means, but a few. So this should be fun, and I hope you'll get to check all these out if you missed any of them. Now, one thing I will address really quick, I don't review documentaries, if you happen to notice. Not that I don't watch them all together. I've seen some here and there. I just don't keep up with them the way I do narrative films. Maybe at some point I'll start reviewing them, but I know some people will mix in documentaries on their best of year lists, but I don't. I know you can still have an emotional reaction to a documentary, but those are supposed to be more of an educational experience, or they'll be something incredibly personal. So to rank those where it's all 100% true, in between narrative movies where they're either fictional or heavily dramatizing something that actually happened, that just doesn't seem right to me, personally. I know people do it, it's just not my thing to do. But I will give a very quick mention to the only 3 documentaries from 2020 that I saw, going from worst, and I really like them all, to the best. The Social Dilemma, Netflix's documentary about the dangers that social media has to offer, which was a mix of stories recounted by tech experts, as well as a short fictional story about someone who gets in way over their head with social media. It was pretty good. It told us what I think a lot of us know. Social media can be pretty bad, and it can be used for a lot of the wrong reasons, and we should probably not be on it for as long as we are. Robin's Wish, which was released on VOD, chronicling the final months of Robin Williams' life, recounting some of the joyful personal encounters people had with him, as well as bringing more awareness to the illness that claimed his life, called Lewy body disease. I thought this was really sweet and heartbreaking, especially because Robin Williams is one of the few celebrity deaths that really struck a nerve with me. I thought it was a wonderful celebration of his life and brought to our attention a terrible little-known disease. But my favorite documentary was Dick Johnson is Dead, another Netflix release, which is by Kirsten Johnston, chronicling her father who's suffering from dementia and her preparations to say goodbye to him. This was probably one of the best things I saw all year, to be quite honest, between movies, documentaries, TV shows, and so on. It's very emotional, but something interesting they do here is also stage hypothetical deaths for Dick Johnson, which he goes along with in good fun. And it's meant to be a little bit of dark comedy to help everyone prepare for the inevitable. Again, it's another nice celebration of life. It's incredibly sweet, a lot funnier than I was expecting it to be, and I couldn't recommend it enough. But now, onto the list. Let's start with 5 honorable mentions, and they are, alphabetically, Bad Education, a dark comedy on HBO centered around corruption in a school that features an excellent performance from Hugh Jackman at the top of his game. Clouds, the story behind the viral song of the same name on Disney Plus that centered around a young songwriter who learns he has a terminal illness. It was a sweet, highly emotional, and inspirational journey. Mangrove, one of 5 entries in the Small Axe anthology on Amazon Prime, which focused on a trial in London in the 1970s after a group of protesters clashed with the police. This was a powerful film with great moments of exhilarating courtroom drama that also tackled issues still relevant to today. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, a Netflix film based on the stage play of the same name, which focused on the tensions in a heated recording session, and it was anchored by 2 excellent performances from Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman in his final role. and One Night in Miami, also based on the play of the same name, which was just released on Amazon Prime after a limited theatrical run, which is a fictional account of a meeting between Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown. And it was a fast-paced 2 hours, which also drew many parallels to today and featured 4 Oscar-worthy performances, making for an excellent directorial debut by Regina King. All very good movies. Go check all of them out. I really enjoy them. But let's not waste any more time and let's get to my top 25 of 2020. At number 25 is Red, White, and Blue, another of the entries in Steve McQueen's Small Axe series on Amazon Prime, and this was my favorite of the bunch. I felt like a lot of people really didn't talk about Small Axe too much in general, outside of some film circles, which is a shame because I thought most of them were great. There's some debate if these are technically considered movies or episodes of a TV show, but they're all roughly feature length, and McQueen himself has referred to them as movies, so that's what I'm going with as well. This one was a true story that stars John Boyega as a man whose father has an altercation with the cops, which leads him to wanting to change the system from within. Boyega himself is a big part as to why this works so well. I thought this was one of his best performances in a long time, and I think it's probably one of the most accurate portrayals regarding if you're actually able to change this particular system from within. It's a very timely film with a lot of family drama sprinkled in there that I really enjoyed. At number 24 is The Climb from new director Michael Angelo Covino, who also stars in the film, and it focuses on the ups and downs of a friendship over many years. It was released in theaters in the fall, so I don't think a ton of people saw this, but I think it got on the nerves of some of the people who actually did see it, because it portrays a very toxic sort of friendship, with one character repeatedly causing some sort of misfortune on the other. But the story itself is great, and it's still relatable because we've all had these sort of toxic friendships and relationships before, so if you take a step back, you'll realize you've more than likely been in a similar situation yourself. But that aside, it's a very funny movie, and it draws a lot of influence from both Wes Anderson as well as French cinema, and it makes for an enjoyable, quirky, hilarious experience. At number 23 is Synchronic, which stars Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan as 2 paramedics who discover the effects of the drug of the same name, which causes those who take it to have some pretty freaky experiences. This was another one that slipped under the radar because it was released in theaters in the fall, and it's labeled more as a horror film, and there is a little bit of it in there because of some of the imagery, don't get me wrong there, but it's more sci-fi than anything. I won't get into how because the trailer does a good job of hiding what happens, but I will say I thought this was one of Anthony Mackie's best performances in years, and I thought it was an absolutely visually stunning movie, plus it was one of the more unique original concepts I saw in 2020. I don't think it hit VOD yet, but definitely watch it when it does, and I look forward to more from directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. At number 22 is Uncle Frank, an Amazon Prime film starring Paul Bettany as a gay man who has to confront his past after a death in the family. Sophia Lillis stars as Frank's niece, and Peter Macdissi plays his partner, all of whom are on this road trip together throughout the movie, and I found it to be an absolutely delightful experience, anchored heavily by all 3 actors' performances, with Paul Bettany in particular in top form here. It's a very funny film with a lot of charm, but hits all the right notes on an emotional level as well. I thought the writing from Alan Ball, who also directed this, was wonderful. And what helped is that it was a deeply personal film for him, and you feel that all throughout this. So if you're looking for a great family drama, look no further. At number 21 is Jingle Jangle: A Christmas Journey, Netflix's Christmas musical film that took me totally by surprise about a young girl who visits her eccentric grandfather who invents a toy that can change their lives forever. The film has a lot of the typical themes that come with a Christmas movie, but it almost never feels hokey or contrived in the way in which it conveys it. And that's partially why it works for me. You can have a movie that feels totally familiar, but if it's executed in a certain way, then I'm totally okay with it. Because this film feels just so honest and sincere, and it had one of the best visual aesthetics I've seen in a movie all year, with this cool steampunk vibe to it. And it had some great performances, especially from Forrest Whitaker as the grandfather, but what really sealed the deal for me was the music. I've said it before a million times, but I absolutely love musicals, and all the songs here are really top-notch stuff. I found myself moving to the beat to nearly all of them, including one in particular sung by Keegan-Michael Key. Not only will kids adore this one, but parents will get a kick out of it as well. At number 20 is Sylvie's Love, which is quite possibly one of the sweetest films of the year, released on Amazon Prime, which stars Tessa Thompson and Nnamdi Asomugha as two people whose somewhat troubled romance spans the course of many years. I found this to be absolutely wonderful, as I found my heart warming up anytime both Tessa Thompson and Nnamdi Asomugha were on screen together. Their chemistry together was perfect, and I just had this big grin on my face even when they said the most throwaway line to each other. But where this film also works is, since it takes place in both the 1950s and 60s, it's also one giant tribute to classic cinema, with a lot of the aesthetic recreating the look of a film from that era. And I'm a big fan of those movies, so this is an absolute joy from start to finish. At number 19 is Anything for Jackson, a Shudder original film that was this mix of Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, where an elderly couple make a literal deal with the devil to get their grandson back, only for the tables to be turned on them. I think if you're a big horror fan, Shudder is definitely the place to be, as it has a lot of excellent hidden gems, with this being one of them. This is a high-speed, intense 90 minutes, and the one thing I absolutely loved about it is how it doesn't operate as your traditional cult-like sort of film. This elderly couple are clearly antagonists, but the thing they summon ends up terrorizing everyone in the movie. But it's not like everyone then bands together against it. So it's this giant free-for-all where this poor woman who they kidnap has to fight them while all three of them are individually terrorized by this demon. And it messes with you a number of times. I think this one's a must for horror fans. At number 18 is The Call, a Netflix South Korean horror movie in which two women in the same house regularly call each other, but with the twist being that one's in the past 20 years ago and the other is in the present. I had a lot of fun with this movie, and I thought it was one of the best concepts of the year, as it didn't deal with time travel, but it had pseudo time travel elements, because you'd have our character in the present relay information to our character in the past, who would use it to make some adjustments, which would then change both of their timelines. It just makes for a very creative film, and one that's also incredibly fast-paced and regularly thrilling. Each scene just gets more and more intense with its regular blending of sci-fi, horror, and crime thriller all in one. I had a great time with it, and I think you will as well. At number 17 is Scare Me, another Shudder release, and I think I'm going to lose a few of you with this one, because I know some people are very mixed about it, because most of the movie is essentially two people, and at one point three people, stuck in a cabin during a storm, telling each other scary stories. I'd say 70 to 80 of the 100-minute runtime is just that. And we'll get little effects where the stories kind of come to life, and characters visualize what they see, and all that. But I loved it. It's just a really fun movie. All of it's played for laughs, and I had this giddy smile on my face pretty much the entire time. And that's especially because of Aya Cash, who's one of our two leads. And she is absolutely hysterical here, and is a non-stop burst of energy. She always has a snarky comeback, a good quip, or an insult at her disposal, and she had me roaring with laughter the entire time. But it's not just a one-note joke fest, because the film also pokes fun at a lot of genre stereotypes, as she's constantly tearing down our other main character, who's this writer that's kind of dorky, but he's also insecure and covers it up with a lot of arrogance that he can't back up, as he always resorts to the most basic cliched storytelling devices possible, which he constantly critiques, and it comes together in a great way. I'm not saying it's the deepest movie out there by any means, but it's probably some of the most fun I had with a movie in 2020, especially for its deconstruction of story tropes. At number 16 is The 40-Year-Old Version, a Netflix film about a struggling New York playwright who reinvents herself as a rapper and finds a way to combine hip-hop and theater to find her true voice. This film is absolutely wonderful, and is especially noteworthy as its star Rada Blank also wrote, directed, and co-produced it. And it's a hell of a debut, I gotta say. It's a semi-autobiographical tale with a lot of events paralleling her own life, and what I also appreciate about it is how New York is known for a lot of the arts, and how that's one of the big places to be if you want to make it in that field, but this shows the other side of that experience, and shows what it's like to those who try pursuing a career in the arts and aren't as successful. And it's very direct in its presentation, though oftentimes being absolutely hilarious about it. I look forward to whatever Rada Blank does next, because she is a true talent. At number 15 is Black Bear, in which a writer goes on a retreat at a cabin in the woods with a young couple, and all of her inner demons come out to haunt them. I will say right up front, if you're not into experimental films, you're probably not going to like this. Normally, I'm not the biggest fan of them either, but I think what sets this apart from a lot of them is that it doesn't leave things necessarily too vague and abstract for you. Things are open to interpretation, but it gives you a lot to work with, and because of that, it's a very engaging story that does a great job of mixing dark comedy with a romantic thriller. It's a really fascinating watch. But the highlight is Aubrey Plaza, who gives what's hands down her best performance here. Like, she's done serious films before, but this is her stepping totally out of her comfort zone in terms of her range. And she is absolutely mesmerizing from start to finish. So if you don't mind films with an unconventional approach, this is worth watching for her performance alone. At number 14 is Words on Bathroom Walls, a romantic drama focusing on a high school student trying to deal with a mental illness as he forms a romance with the class genius once he transfers to a new school. Now, I normally don't love these young adult romance dramas. I mean, I like them, but not to the extent in which I enjoyed this movie, because this, along with a few others on this list, was probably one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. It still has a little bit of the cheesy melodrama that you get with similar movies, mainly towards the end, but this is mainly a showcase of a teenager struggling to deal with a mental illness, and it treats the subject with so much respect and such tenderness that it hits you hard, especially as it tries to visually manifest what our main character Adam is experiencing. And when you see these wild hallucinations and visions, literally from his point of view, it becomes incredibly heartbreaking. I thought Charlie Plummer and Taylor Russell both do excellent jobs here. The story was very effective, and even if you're not into these young adult romantic dramas, definitely make an exception for this one because it'll surprise you. At number 13 is Wolfwalkers, Cartoon Saloon's fantasy drama on Apple TV Plus, where a young girl forms a friendship with a wolfwalker, which is a human who can take on the form of a wolf as they sleep, and they join together to find her lost mother and to stop the last remaining wolf pack from being wiped out. I've never seen a Cartoon Saloon film before watching this, but now I can't wait to go back and watch their other movies because the animation here was absolutely stunning, and I loved how it kept things so simplistic, yet through other means such as its sound mixing and incredible voice work, it would really bring to life this entire world for us. The film mixed family drama with an action movie as well as a fantasy adventure all in one, and it is such a treat, especially because we don't get that many 2D animated films these days. At number 12 is The Five Bloods, Spike Lee's war drama on Netflix that focuses on 4 war veterans who return to Vietnam to seek the remains of their fallen squad leader and the fortune he helped them bury. This mixes the adventure drama of films such as The Treasure of the Sierra Madre in the present day sequences, and then in the flashbacks, it recreates the feel of older war films such as Apocalypse Now. The film has some of the absolute best cinematography I've seen in a film all year, as the present day sequences look absolutely beautiful, while the flashbacks capture that grainy feel of older films like the ones I mentioned. It's a fast-paced, high-energy experience that had one sequence in particular where our characters tried defusing a bomb, being one of the year's most intense moments. But at the heart of this are the performances by all the actors playing the soldiers, with Delroy Lindo in top form here. Plus you have Chadwick Boseman as the squad leader also shining in his second to last performance. At number 11 is Shithouse. And yes, that's really what it's called. A homesick college freshman goes to a party and winds up walking and talking through the campus with his sophomore RA, who just wants someone to talk to. This was another one of those movies where barely anyone talked about it because it got a quiet VOD release in October, and it kind of just came and went. The star of the film, newcomer Cooper Raiff, also wrote and directed this in his feature debut. And it's just a simple yet highly effective story about trying to find connections. It's a coming-of-age movie with some romantic drama thrown in there, also mixed with awkward comedy. And when I say awkward, this gets really awkward. You may find yourself cringing a number of times here, but I think it perfectly captures these really odd social situations perfectly, as well as what happens when people start getting inside their head way too easily and overthink interactions in some of the worst ways. And the performances were excellent, plus it can be very funny and very sweet. So I guess you can say Shithouse is really the shit. Bringing us into the top 10 is The Wolf of Snow Hollow, another film I felt was pretty overlooked about a stressed out deputy in a small town when dead bodies begin turning up after each full moon. Brought to us by Jim Cummings, who is not the same as the voice actor by the way, who wrote, directed, and starred in it, this is another film that I just found to be a lot of fun. This is a horror comedy that had me in hysterical laughter the entire time, mainly for just the way in which these angry townspeople would constantly hound this one deputy, and he becomes more and more agitated throughout the movie. But the way in which it's done, it's in the style of people arguing over something much more mundane than what's actually going on. So it's extremely quirky in its execution, but that's part of the film's charm, anchored especially by Cummings' own bizarre performance. The film is also notable for being the final film of Robert Forster, who sadly passed away in 2019, and he also shines here as well as Cummings' father. In ninth place is Driveways, a film that features Brian Dennehy in one of his last roles as a widowed war veteran who forms a friendship with a young boy who is cleaning out the house of his deceased aunt who lived next door. This was just a delightful, sweet story and another film that focuses on the themes of finding connections. I never found myself going aw more than I did when watching this film. The interactions among all these characters were very tender and none of it ever felt contrived in any way. And it's probably the most low-stakes film of everything on here, as there's rarely a major moment of conflict, and there's no one regularly openly antagonistic towards one another. It's just this quiet, emotional snapshot of life that will have you feeling so warm by the end of it. In eighth place is Promising Young Woman, the feature debut of writer-director Emerald Fennell, which stars Carey Mulligan as a young woman who seeks to get revenge on those who took part in a traumatizing event from years ago. One part dark comedy, one part revenge thriller, this is a wild genre mashup full of twists and turns, giving us a highly effective story, yet also throwing in some stellar social commentary at the same time. If you've seen the trailer, you know it has an incredibly stacked cast, though the majority of them, while nice to see, are simply in glorified cameos. What anchors this, though, is Carey Mulligan in what was easily her best role in years. She absolutely lit up the screen and she never once lets up. The film's not completely what you think it would be based on the trailer, as it manages to surprise you a number of times, but it's always in the best way possible. In seventh place is Happiest Season, Hulu's Christmas comedy about a young woman who goes to spend the holidays with her girlfriend's family, only to find out she hasn't come out to them yet. It's a film that can feel somewhat familiar at times, but as I said, if familiar elements are done the right way, it's perfectly okay with me. And here, due to the charms of the cast and a lot of the great jokes, it all lands really well. This is another film with a top-notch cast, with Kristen Stewart leading the charge, along with some standout supporting performances from the likes of Aubrey Plaza and Dan Levy, among many others. The film has so many different subplots going on, exploring the broken dynamics of this family that tries way too hard to come off as perfect, and it all converges really well, resulting in what's easily one of the best holiday-themed films in quite some time. In sixth place is The Invisible Man, Blumhouse's take on the classic Universal character about a woman whose abusive boyfriend supposedly dies, only for her to suspect his death is a hoax and he's terrorizing her in secret. From director Lee Winnell, this uses a horror lens to take gaslighting to a whole other level, with our lead, played brilliantly by Elizabeth Moss, slowly losing her mind as she finds herself consistently tormented throughout the film, though unfortunately with no one believing her. And while that may seem like a familiar concept, especially in horror, the execution is top-notch. The film does a masterful job of carefully ratcheting up the tension, never feeling slow thanks to its clever screenplay and Winnell's commanding direction, leading to a fast-paced 2 hours of thrills and excitement that is one of the year's best horror movies and one that you won't want to miss. In fifth place is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, in which two teenage girls travel from Pennsylvania to New York to seek medical assistance after an unintended pregnancy. This is a hauntingly beautiful film that really shines a light on a sensitive topic and handles it with the utmost care. The film is very quiet and reserved as it slowly chips away at who our two main characters are, uncovering information in dialogue-heavy scenes that never feels forced or contrived, including one brutal moment from which the title is derived that is absolutely heartbreaking. And at the center of this is a fantastic lead performance by newcomer Sydney Flanagan in her feature debut, who comes off like a total natural here. The film is an emotional journey that treats its protagonist and its subject with so much respect, and it will sit with you for quite some time once it's over. In fourth place is Palm Springs, the Hulu romantic comedy in which two people have a chance encounter on the day of a wedding, only to find themselves stuck in a time loop together. This was another film that took me by surprise. Not because I didn't expect it to be good, I just didn't expect it to be as good as it was. It's another take on the Groundhog Day formula that we've seen I don't know how many times by this point, but it manages to give the concept a fresh spin and make it an engaging and absolutely hilarious adventure from start to finish. The film is bursting with energy thanks to two charismatic performances by Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti, and it also features J.K. Simmons as a sort of antagonist in a role that is pitch perfect for him, with his usual vulgar tirades and insults but utilized for an ultimately fun dynamic. It's an incredibly sweet film and also the year's funniest, and it proves how there are so many different ways you can tell a familiar concept and make it still work. In third place is Run, another Hulu film in which a homeschooled wheelchair-bound teenager begins to suspect her mother is hiding a deep, dark secret from her. The second film from Anish Shagante, after the absolutely brilliant Searching, he once again delivers another knockout thriller in what's one part Rear Window and one part Misery, the latter of which is one of my favorite movies of all time, which is part of why I loved it so much. Shigante is a director who knows how to literally keep me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Scene after scene was one high-stakes thrill ride after another, because where a lot of the tension rests is the fact that our main character, played by newcomer Kiera Allen, has to time nearly each of her investigations while her mother is distracted or on an errand, and everything is a giant race against the clock as secrets are uncovered and truths are told. Sarah Paulson, who plays the villainous mother, is good here, but the real star of this is Kiera Allen, who gives an absolutely stellar performance supported by Shigante's fast-paced writing and direction. It had me hooked from start to finish, and I was never once able to look away. In second place is Sound of Metal, Amazon Prime's drama about a drummer who experiences hearing loss and seeks out a deaf community to learn how to live with his new situation. This movie is absolutely phenomenal. While at a glance you may think you're in for something in the vein of Whiplash, you instead get a quiet, more reflective experience about one man trying to find his inner peace and still figure out a way in which he can still have an impact on the world. Riz Ahmed here gives quite possibly his best performance. I've always found him to be a great charismatic actor, but he's mostly been in supporting roles throughout most of his career. So I'm really happy he finally got this project where he was truly able to shine. There's such an authentic feel to the story, which is especially boosted by the fact that deaf actors were hired to play various members of this community, along with Paul Raci, the hearing son of a deaf family who also works as an ASL interpreter, cast as the leader of the community. And all of the ways in which they played off one another was great, as we get more of an up-close and personal look of what they experience on a day-to-day basis. Though the film adds an extra layer to the experience in what is easily the best sound mixing of the year, where it recreates for the audience what our main character is experiencing once he loses his hearing. Noises will be muffled or distorted, and there's one point, as I was watching this on my laptop, where I felt it shake because of how much it emphasizes what these characters feel when a noise is made. It's an absolutely beautiful film about looking inward, and it is an absolute must-see. But my number one movie of 2020 is Soul, in which an aspiring jazz musician has a brush with death that causes his soul to separate from his body, and he has to find a way to make himself complete again, along with the help of an unborn soul who doesn't want to head to Earth. This is another film that explores concepts such as death, the meaning of life, and finding your inner peace, and it does so in such a masterful way that only so many people, like those at Pixar, can pull off. This really hit me hard. I think if you're someone who ever felt unfulfilled by what you do, or you felt you're lost, or looking for more, then this is the movie for you. It still has a lot of the usual Pixar charm and the sense of humor that we're used to from so many of their films, but this also goes a step further than what I've seen in a lot of their movies. It's by far their most dramatic, and by that I mean it's consistently a much more serious film than it is humorous. But it also works brilliantly as the celebration of life, as we follow our main character, voiced by Jamie Foxx, who tries to find himself as he looks back at a lot of the things that brought him meaning. It's more of an existential, animated version of It's a Wonderful Life in a way. I know some people have said about this movie that it's good, but it's not one of Pixar's best, and I can see where they're coming from, but I said this in my review and I'll say it again. If you've ever felt the way our main character has felt for such an extended period of time, it will hit you on a much deeper level. Being able to relate to it truly enhances the experience. It's a beautiful film with timely themes, and it's not only another Pixar masterpiece, but my favorite movie of the year. And that's that. What a year. As I said, despite COVID causing so many movies to be pushed back, and we didn't get a lot of big name films we were expecting, we still got a lot of really high quality stuff this year. There were a number of hidden gems that probably wouldn't have gotten as much recognition had 2020 been a normal year. And as someone who's highly supportive of independent films and finds a lot of value in them, I was really happy they got some of the recognition that they deserved. But I am glad we're just done with 2020. Though I do want to add just a big thank you to all of you for subscribing and liking each of my videos and helping me get my content out there. This was my first year on YouTube, and it was a hell of a first year, to say the least. And it's kind of funny how things worked out, as I've been home all this time, and it helped me expedite getting a better grasp on how everything works and helped me hone in on things a lot more. I think we'd be having a totally different conversation had it been a normal year and my time had been divided up. So I definitely wouldn't have had as much time to really figure everything out. So I know it's been a crappy year, but I'm trying to take the good and the bad for what it is. Thank you all, though. It's much appreciated. I'm looking forward to what 2021 has to offer. I have a ton of stuff planned, so I hope you'll be sticking around. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite movies of 2020 are, and if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it. Plus, for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you next time.